key American senators have announced an agreement on new bipartisan gun legislation in response to last month's mass shootings. The modest reform currently has the backing of 10 Democrats and 10 Republicans, making it far likelier for the bill to pass. The centrepiece of the proposed deal would provide resources for individual states to implement red flag laws. The agreement also establishes more rigorous background checks for those aged between 18 and 21 years old. Despite falling short of tougher restrictions called for by Democrats, President Biden has called for quick action to pass the legislation, saying, "I want to thank Senator Chris Murphy and the bipartisan group for their gun safety proposal. It does not do everything that I think is needed, but it reflects important steps in the right direction." With bipartisan support, there are no excuses for delay. What do you make of this kind of progress?
Good morning, Pete. Well, it's one step forward and two steps back. It's a big deal because it's the first time in 30 years anybody's going to do anything about gun safety or gun control. And you're right, they're going to put resources into this, mental health resources into the schools and that kind of thing, and put in the red flag. But this money has to be accepted by the governments of the 50 states. They can reject the money, tell the federal government to go in a different direction. But what's big news here is that it's the first time that there's been any forward motion in 30 years, Pete. Now, look, the two obvious things is you raise the price, you raise the age of those who can own a gun from 18 to 21. That's common sense, but nobody wants to do it. And the second thing is you stop the sale of these automatic weapons. I mean, if you don't want to get rid of automatic weapons and you don't want to reduce the age, maybe you haven't done too much. But there are a lot of people here in Washington who are pretty pleased that the Republicans have moved off the dime on this and are prepared to assist a little bit. But it's not much in terms of what you might see from there. But it's considered a breakthrough here because, as you know, the United States Senate doesn't work very well in terms of bipartisan legislation. So, of course, it's a framework. They still have to write it up, and they have a bit to go. But I think while it may provide some good, it doesn't really please everybody because it just doesn't go enough.
Employers and industry groups are warning of price increases in response to the Fair Work Commission's decision yesterday to raise the minimum wage by 5.2%. The Prime Minister and the ACTU welcomed the $40 per week increase as a means of protecting the real value of wages, but industry groups say it's merely adding fuel to the inflation fire. Fair Work has moved to mitigate the increase by granting lower rises to 2 million employees, on higher award rates. The new national minimum will come into effect from July. Joining me live now is the owner of the Appetite 5 Café, Philip Sahlhab. Philip, good morning to you. So, with respect to this rise of 5.2% for the minimum wage, can you afford it?
Short answer is no. Whilst we accept the increase in the minimum wage, obviously for our team and for those who are on the minimum wage to keep up with cost of living pressures, we as a business cannot afford it, especially when we are already offering higher than minimum wage to fulfill the positions that we're trying to fulfill. For example, we're looking for a kitchen hand. We're offering already above minimum wage, but other venues in our industry offering $40 more. That's the going rate at the moment, and we can't offer that.
So there's a bit of a price war at the moment when it comes to, attracting staff, and the staff ultimately end up being the winners here.
Oh, most certainly. Putting us up against each other, going from interview to trial, telling us what they've been offered and getting us to hopefully match or beat it, and we just cannot do it. Right. We cannot survive on that. And long term, will we be able to open? Probably not at this point.
So the Socceroos have pulled off a miracle, qualifying for the World Cup in Qatar later on this year after a tense penalty shootout victory against Peru this morning. Coach Graham Arnold pulled off what proved to be a masterstroke, substituting the captain Matt Ryan for backup keeper Andrew Redmayne for the shootout. The Australians started in the worst possible fashion, missing their first spot kick. Peru missed their third spot kick and then, in sudden death, stumbled again.
Alex Valera. And Redmayne makes the save. It's a save that means the world to Australia.
But as a goalkeeper, Mark, what do you make of Redmayne's approach? You know, the whole dancing on the line thing and moving from side to side. What do you make of that?
Yeah, look, I find it very strange, but I've seen it being successful before. I think it was about probably 2, maybe 3 years ago now. His team, Sydney FC, played against Perth Glory in the A-League Grand Final in Perth. And it went to a penalty shootout, and he'd done exactly the same tactic, and it worked. Sydney won, and that was away from home as well. It's always more difficult away from home when you're facing penalty shootouts. That was in front of a packed Optus Stadium. So as silly as it looks, and a lot of people from England were calling me in Europe and in South America going, what is he doing? I think it can be very off-putting. And I wouldn't be surprised as well. Honestly, I know IFAB, who's the international body, who's the subdivision of FIFA who make the rules for the game. I wouldn't be surprised if our goalkeepers start doing this and they might look at that and say, well, listen, we don't think this is cricket, so to speak. But It works, and it worked this morning, and he's a national hero.
China says it will fight to the very end to stop Taiwanese independence. The Chinese Defence Minister says the nation only seeks peace and stability. He's accusing the United States of being a bully and interfering in China's internal affairs, including Taiwan. The US Defence Secretary on the weekend had accused Beijing of provocative and destabilising military activity. He says it's up to the US to improve the bilateral relationship.
Let me make this clear. If anyone dares to secede Taiwan from China, we will not hesitate to fight. We will fight at all costs, and we will fight to the very end. This is the only choice for China.
Back to Mr. Miles. He says Australia maintains its support of the One China policy.
Australia does not support Taiwanese independence. We have good relations with the people of Taiwan. What we don't want to see is any unilateral action on either side of the Taiwan Strait which changes the status quo. And what we do want to see is that the situation for the people of Taiwan is resolved through peaceful negotiation.
Deputy Prime Minister Richard Marles has flown to Japan to meet with key defence and security figures. He travelled from Singapore after attending the Shangri-La Defence Dialogue, where he met with China's Defence Minister. Mr. Marles, who is also Defence Minister, will meet with his Japanese counterpart today, calling on stronger military ties between the two nations in the Indo-Pacific. This will include a push for more military exercises in the region. Several suburbs across Sydney's northern beaches suffered power outages overnight due to coal and gas shortages, spurred by rising prices and the cold weather. Further supply reserve shortfalls are currently forecast in Queensland and New South Wales over the coming days. In response, residents are being asked to conserve power usage to prevent further blackouts. Deputy Nationals leader Perrin Davey has told Sky News the states risk making the situation worse.
Allowing states to go back to state-based power policies flies in the face of the purpose of the national energy market. I would say if the states want to implement policies where they're going to pick and choose what technologies they use, then they must accept the risk.
Let's get some business news now. Bring it all back down. Edward Boyd joins us. Ed, good morning to you. The local stock market absolutely wiped out yesterday on global recession fears. How likely is a recession now?
Well, investors are always trying to look 12 months ahead at what is in the future for the market. And clearly yesterday they were really worried about the chances of a recession probably around this time next year. And if you think about to June next year, interest rates are going to be substantially higher. They'll be around that 3% level, maybe 3.5% level. That's the cash rate. So remember, add on another couple of percent for a bank. So mortgage rates will be 5.5% 6% even, which is a level we haven't seen for quite a few years in Australia. And there are a lot of concerns that there might be some people that may not be able to pay off those loans on their mortgages and need to sell their houses. We've got house prices starting to fall, and it could trigger a bit of a recession.
The Queen has become the world's second longest reigning monarch, overtaking Thailand's king, who reigned for 70 years and 126 days from 1927 until 2016. The Queen celebrated her Platinum Jubilee just last week. That marked 70 years on the throne. She became the longest-serving British monarch in 2015, surpassing her great-great-grandmother, Queen Victoria. The record, though, still remains with Louis XIV of France. His reign lasted 72 years and 110 days, beginning at the age of 4. So Queen Elizabeth has got to hang in there for a few more years. I think she will, and then she'll get that record. A black hole the size of 3 billion suns has been discovered by researchers at the Australian National University. It's the fastest growing black hole in 9 billion years, according to the International Team of Astronomers. They're the ones who are counting. The black hole consumes the equivalent of 1 Earth every second. It's also 7,000 times brighter than all the light from our galaxy, making it visible to backyard astronomers. All you need, though, is a good telescope. The discovery was made as part of the Sky Mapper project that aims to produce a digital record of the entire southern sky. The first British deportation flight due to take asylum seekers to Rwanda has been cancelled after a series of last-minute appeals. The plane will not be leaving due to a series of interventions from the European Court of Human Rights. British Prime Minister Boris Johnson maintains the policy to send asylum seekers to Rwanda will support safe and legal migrant routes to the UK. The policy has been condemned by the Church of England's senior bishops as immoral. Prime Minister Anthony Albanese has met the asylum seeker family that returned to central Queensland last week after more than 4 years in immigration detention. The family arrived in the country town of Biloela on Friday afternoon on bridging visas. They're still seeking permanent residency. The Prime Minister tweeting, "So lovely to meet the Nadasalingam family today. They're finally home. Tharnika and Kopika going to school, and the Biloela community have welcomed back a much-loved family."